Welcome to the afternoon session of our seminar, nutrition seminar here at Avila Beach, California. And we have a lot of work to do this afternoon, so I'm going to jump right into the colon work. There's a lot of openings in that field. No, really, seriously, that's going to be edited out. Like I said, any legitimate program of detox begins with the colon. What did the ancients used to say? Death begins in the colon. In the same way, life begins in the colon. It is the center of the immune system. That's what even modern psychoneuroimmunology is beginning to concede, that the center of the immune system is in the colon. And as I said before, the primary physiologic purpose of the colon is for water and electrolyte absorption, right? Here was one of my first teachers. Colon physiology was Dr. Richard Anderson, because 10 years university, I graduated from all these places and I never heard the word probiotics and all that. So it's medical education, right? So Richard Anderson was my first teacher in this regard, and he still has, his book is still available at Barnes & Noble, Cleanse and Purify Thyself, your note number 39. Now, Anderson goes over the top sometimes, but this guy, he dedicated his life. He had several different clinics all around the western part of the United States, and he was a lecturer, and he is a real authority in this area. He's kind of controversial. That's because he's telling the truth, and he's not swayed by medical orthodoxy. He introduced the concept of transit time. No, actually, this is Bernard Jensen, chiropractor. Bernard Jensen was well into colon detox. He used to talk about the concept of transit time. And here's what Jensen said. He said, normally, you store 3 meals before the waste from one comes out. So that's daily, right? 3 meals in, 1 waste from the third last one came out, right? When I start interviewing people, patient questionnaire, the intake questionnaire, it says, how many eliminations do you have every week? And if you want to get some information about your patients that was a little bit more than you needed, start asking this question, and you're going to get answers like 1, 2, 1 every 10 days, things like that. And it's like, okay. And they think that's normal, right? What I'm telling you here is it's common for people to store 9, 12, even 24 meals or more before the waste from one comes out. So here's the marker test. You boil up a bunch of frozen corn, right? And you eat that at dinner time, and then you notice when it comes out. And that's your marker test. If it's more than 24 hours, then you have a transit problem. Elimination normally should be effortless, and it should be effortless and not painful. Contrast this to what a lot of people talk about as straining to produce rabbit pellets. A lot of people live like that and they think it's normal. Normal elimination should be daily and it should be effortless. It wasn't until post-grad that I learned the reality of probiotics. So I call it the forgotten component of detox. I have a couple different chapters on this subject on the website that you can look at. This is the final stage of digestion, and again, this accounts for the colon being the immune center of the body. Yeah. So here was my world-class teacher in this area was the late Kem Shahani, the University of Nebraska. He published all the time in peer-reviewed journals, many times in JAMA. What he used to tell us that what most of you probably know by now are probiotics are the friendly bacteria which should exist in the human colon. Up to 400 strains of bacteria are normal in the human colon. You should have 3 pounds of flora at any given time in your colon. They are the cleanup crew, the final stage of digestion. We don't have to be diagnosing, I have C. difficile, I have, what's the other one, H. pylori, and therefore those are pathogens, and therefore we have to figure out what antibiotics I'm going to take to kill these. No, it doesn't work that way. The important thing, this is what Shahani taught us, that this is the difference between human physiology and medical medical persuasion, right? Pretending like bugs cause disease, that whole myth, right? With a few rare exceptions, it doesn't really matter which of these normal human bacteria are in your colon. What matters is the dynamic equilibrium. There must be a balance. If there is not a balance, then what can happen is one potentially pathogenic bacteria like H. pylori can begin to proliferate and gain an ascendancy and take over, and that can cause a real problem. But the issue here is that the majority of Americans live most of their lives with little or no probiotics in the colon. That's the first problem. What would be the primary reason for that? Well, of course, it's anytime you take antibiotics, most of the bacteria in your body are destroyed. But more than that, more chronically, anytime you eat meat that isn't organic, like chicken, like turkey, like beef, corporate confined type of technology is going to include loads and loads of antibiotics, and no matter what they say, they persist. These antibiotics in animals persist during the food processing, are still active when we eat the Colonel Sanders chicken or the deli sliced turkey at Safeway. They're still in there, and they are active in our bodies, and one of the first things they do is kill our gut flora. So here's a quote from Jensen back in the day. Bacteria and viruses, which are cell scavengers, are there because there is malnourished, enzyme-depleted, diseased, and necrotic tissue. So this is a book everyone should read, Empty Harvest. That's another book that should be in your library. Nature's biologic sanitation department, to break down and eliminate the sick tissue to prevent further poisoning of the body. If you stop their action, you allow continuous poisoning by the decaying tissue. Yeah. So it's an idea of auto-intoxication. Without gut flora, we are contributing to auto-intoxication. So, like I said, why do most Americans have no probiotics? First two reasons that I already told you. The third thing is, every time you take antacid like Zantac, Tagamet, Prilosec, you're destroying your gut flora. NSAIDs, Advil, Tylenol, Excedrin, Motrin, prescription meds, over-the-counter meds, all of these things cause destruction of gut flora. Here's some other things that do it. White sugar, chlorinated water, carbonated drinks. So whenever they ask you syngas or congas, you say syngas. Fluoridated water destroys gut flora. Antihistamines, coffee, there's another problem with coffee. Yep. Even the FDA uses the term epidemic to describe the amount of human disease from eating meat laced with antibiotics. That's a direct quote from Kem Shahani. Even the FDA calls it an epidemic. If you live your life with no probiotics, what does that incline you towards? First off, like I said, proliferation of opportunists, potentially pathogenic opportunists. The bacteria that can really cause problems can gain an ascendancy. Dehydration, okay, how does that work? Well, if you don't have complete digestion in the colon, then you have this smooth, shiny matrix lining blocking resorption of water through the pores in the colon, and water goes out of you, and you dehydrate. And then, of course, electrolytes follow water, right? So then you're getting mineral depleted as well, right? This causes immune suppression and eventually primary colon disease. So colon cancer is the number 3 cancer of all the cancers, right? Colitis, you got to be really vigilant. We have to be really vigilant, not only for ourselves, but for our patients. These butchers, you go to your internal medicine guy, your gastroenterologist, you complain not too much about a chronic colon problem, GI problem, and you're going to walk out of there with 3/4 of your colon resected. I mean, they'll do that at the drop of a hat. I'm serious. They have no idea how the human colon works. They have an idea how to cut it and glue it back together. They're good on that. Dr. Shahani, I mean, this was his life's work from the time he was a young man to the time he died. And he would tell us one experiment that they did at University of Nebraska is they went into town and they went into all the health food stores and they bought all the probiotic products off the shelves and they took them back to his laboratory and they tested them. And what they discovered was that 95% of them, you know, they're supposed to advertise the counts, bacterial counts of each bacteria, 1 billion, 90% of them had less than 5% of advertised bacterial counts. So it's kind of unregulated. It's kind of a generally regarded as safe type of situation. This was something that he really was so ethical beyond everyone else that he really wanted to make sure that his product really had the counts that it advertised. So the concept of prebiotic came up. A prebiotic is something that allows probiotics to remain in a suspended state for up to 2 years and still be active in a person when you take them. Also, the design of the capsule is critical. With most probiotic supplements, the capsule dissolves in the stomach and small intestine, thereby destroying the probiotics. Shahani's capsules were designed to only dissolve once they reach the colon so that the contents of the capsule will be delivered to the large intestine. If the capsule comes apart in the small intestine, they're neutralized. I'm using his formula because he trained me, right? A formula with 12 strains of probiotics that were raised in a symbiotic relationship. What does that mean? It means when you go to, GNC and you buy L. salivarius because you read an article on Mercola.com saying that that's a good probiotic. As soon as you take that, the rest of your gut flora, if you have any, probably destroy it and neutralize it because it doesn't recognize it. So Shahani knew about the importance of being cultured in a symbiotic relationship. This blend, the various strains recognize each other. It was designed also to be antibiotic resistant. Okay, let's talk about antibiotics for 1 second. That was my first chapter on my website that I ever wrote. You should all read it. It's called The Post-Antibiotic Age. It's still there. So we all know that. What did Fleming say? Antibiotics are for one reason and one reason only: life-threatening infection or persistent infections that will not go away. No prophylactic antibiotics. No just-in-case antibiotics. That's what the guy who discovered penicillin said. He saw this whole thing coming. He saw the superbugs and overprescription. He saw that, he predicted that, right? So if you have any brains whatsoever, as far as holistic medicine goes, you realize that, and you don't take antibiotics. Now I know some people who are holistic and they kind of go overboard and they'll really be sick for a long time. They could have availed themselves of antibiotics that would have worked. That's rare. Usually it's the other way. They take too many. It's the downside of taking antibiotics, whether it's a short course or a long course, is what? That it's going to block you up. And the mechanism for that is it's destroying your gut flora. So throughout your course of antibiotics, you're going to be blocked up. And people hate that, right? Okay, so Shahani specifically designed this formula to be antibiotic resistant, which means, okay, when was this? Now, I had a life-threatening infection about 4 years ago, pneumonia, fulminating pneumonia. I collapsed, whatever. So I really had to take Levaquin, which was like one of the strongest antibiotics, if you know what that is. I had to take 2 courses of it, and only 7% of people who take that have to take 2 courses of it. So I did Shahani's formula at the same time, and I had 0 gastrointestinal difficulties as a side effect of this very, very powerful antibiotic. So remember that for yourself, remember that for your patients. In the cases where a patient really has to take antibiotics or you really have no choice yourself or your families, remember that there's a way out of that. And what you do is you double the normal dose of his Florabiotics in the 60-day program is just like the enzymes. It's 9 per day, 3 capsules 3 times a day. There are 2 instances where you should double that. The first one is when you're on antibiotics. He called that the Flora Blitz. Shahani called that the Flora Blitz. But I'm not kidding. I mean, absolutely no gastrointestinal disorder when you're taking antibiotics. It really works. Always remember this. No one ever gets any side effects from taking probiotics. They're absolutely stable. They're absolutely safe. No side effects.